Like to have everybody's attention for a moment.
There's a stat. I don't like bringing up stats, but there's one stat about the Panthers.
In the world is James Harden better scorer than Michael Jordan?
No, he's more creative in that.
Traveling is not creative, Brandon.
He doesn't.
No matter what the score is, and they've said it themselves, whether they're up 10, down 20, whatever, they know they can turn it on whenever.
Why did you have to bring up the Cowboys in this conversation?
Lived in Texas for 2 years and just could not stand to watch Cowboy football.
All right, listen up.
Welcome to The Rundown. Here's Desmond Johnson.
And welcome back to The Rundown. I am your host, Desmond Johnson, joined by a good friend of the program, Kevin Avery from the Four-Man Rush. And Kev, I knew I had to have you on when the draft was over, after the Panthers did what they did over the course of 3 days with this 2020 draft. I wanted to start off with our number one pick, the 7th pick overall, the defensive tackle out of Auburn, Derek Brown. We have been rumored pretty much attached to him for months. It seemed like it kind of came down between him and Clemson linebacker Isaiah Simmons for who we might pick in that pick. Kev, do you think it's a good pick, or should the Panthers have picked someone else at pick number 7?
Well, I think it was an excellent pick to get Derek Brown, even if I take my bias aside. And I have to say that because I've been on the Derek Brown train since like early November. When you look at what was of all the ugliness of the Panthers 2019 season, I think the ugliest was our run defense. We were 31st in the league. With that, we was getting up 148 yards a game. We were giving up 5.4 yards per carry, which was the worst in 20 years. Don't get me wrong. I think Isaiah Simmons is going to be a great talent. But I like the explanation that both Matt Rule and Marty Herney gave. With Isaiah Simmons, he's a team with his flexibility that a more veteran team, could use him more right away. Derek Brown actually was best player available and fits a need, and they want to build their defense from the front to the back instead of back to the front. So that pretty much coincides with what we have been seeing with the four-man rush. So we all thought it was the right decision to get Derek Brown, especially with his position flexibility, his ability to dominate, the fact that double teams and sometimes triple teams don't even impact his ability to still make plays. And he's still growing. When you go back and watch him from year to year, you see him just get better and better every year. So I think he was the right choice for us at number 7.
I'm pretty impressed with him from what I've seen. He seems really well put together in terms of mentally. Clearly, Coach Rule and David Tepper and Marty Herney have made a point to bring in either guys that know Coach Rule's system or quality character type guys to kind of rebuild the program around. And for me, being a fan since the inception in '95, I can't really remember, even when they would bring in a new coach like Ron Rivera or George Seifert or whoever, I don't remember just a total cleaning of house like the way they've kind of done it, with this roster, whether it was Kuechly's retirement or cutting Cam or, just kind of getting rid of Eric Reed. I mean, they basically got rid of most of the stalwarts of the past couple of years for this team. And especially on defense, at first glance, I'm like, man, there's like nobody back from last year. And then like you just said, I mean, we were awful. We were awful on defense last year. So it's not a bad thing that those guys aren't here anymore. With Kevin Avery from the Four-Man Rush, they are the authority when it comes to Carolina Panthers news and notes, film study. These guys were on some of these other candidates that we ended up drafting in the late rounds way before anybody else was, like months before. And I'll give Kev a chance to let you guys know where to get to their info here in just a bit. I wanted to move to the second round and talk about the second round selection that we drafted. We kind of double dipped. We'll end up going 7 times defensive wise. And we'll talk about that in a second too. But the defensive end from Penn State, Yetur Gross-Matos. A lot of people may not know about him, but I know you guys did over at the Four-Man Rush. Tell Panther fans a little bit about Gross-Matos, and do you think that he could develop into an early starter for this extremely young Carolina Panthers defense?
Yeah, Yetur Gross-Matos was someone that actually we had on our radar back as early as December. I had actually posted some of our Four-Man Rush chats online just to, kind of let people know that, hey, we actually got somebody that we had actually been studying film on. But what we're getting here is a football player that has, abilities to affect both the run and the pass. He played 3 years. He was there from 2017 to 2019. You're talking 6'5", 267 pounds, but he still has a frame that can be built upon while still maintaining his quickness and agility. The things that stick out beyond his stats, and I'm not brushing off his stats. He had 111 tackles, 36 and a half tackles for loss, 18 sacks. But again, you just saw him get better year after year with what he does. But as far as what his particular skill set does, he's someone that has a lot of gap discipline. He sets the edge very well. He has a lot of length with his arms that allows him to extend to be able to prevent, offensive tackles or whoever's designed to block him to, get their leverage and move him out the way. I seen him do like 2 or 3 different moves to disengage blockers that really stood out on film. So, gap integrity is one of the things that led to our run defense being so atrocious last year. Guys just getting written all the way out the hole, 5-6 yards down the field, getting blocked. This is a guy that just has a hot motor. He fits the athletic profile that Coach Rule said he wants. Guys that's got length, that's got speed, that's got quickness, that's got agility. So he's just a player that has versatility as a 4-3 DN, as a 3-4 outside linebacker, and on blitzing downs, particularly third down. They even moved inside his 3 technique because his hands are very polished as far as like being able to disengage blockers, as I mentioned a moment ago. So he offers a lot of things that we're looking for.
Yeah, and I actually really like the pick too. I was hoping that with all the moves that they've been making in the offseason, I kind of hoped that they would go really deep defense-wise in this draft. I didn't expect them to do what they ended up doing, but I did like the pick, and kind of picturing Gross Matos along with last year's #1 selection, Brian Burns, on the outside. Now you've got a defensive tackle combination with Derek Brown, Kawan Short coming back from injury reserve. The Panthers have been their best. If you look through their entire history, they've been their best when they have a run-stopping tandem at the defensive tackle position where they're able to stop the run. Whenever teams, like you mentioned, whenever teams are able to gut us, it hurt my soul last year watching like that San Francisco game when they just literally just said, we're going to run the ball up your throat and you're not going to be able to stop it. And that kind of was the precursor for the remainder of the season and ultimately cost Ron Rivera his job with Carolina. Even though I do find it funny that they switched to a 3-4 at the urgency of owner David Tepper. He was the one that wanted to switch to a 3-4, and they kind of switched because of him, and it kind of blew up in their faces in terms of being able to cover anything last year. On the line here with Kevin Avery from the 4-man rush, I want to talk about the later round selections of the Panthers. As people know by now, the Panthers used all 7 of their selections on defense. They're the only team in the modern day era, which started in 1967, to use all of their picks on defense. And I don't know, maybe it's the coronavirus thing. Maybe it's, guys not being able to be, in front of these coaches and scouts like face to face like you normally would over a regular off season. But I feel like we kind of got some gems in terms of what we got. Guys, it seemed like they slipped a few rounds below where they normally would have been if they had gone through the regular process. Diamond in the rough, who's the late round pick that has the best shot of starting for Carolina in 2020, in your opinion, out of the guys that we drafted 3rd round and further back?
Oh, wow. Yeah, definitely. What Herney and Rule said is that they actually had in mind to select a couple of offensive linemen and tight ends, but like 2 or 3 picks before them, those players that they had pegged, based on how they valued them, were selected. So it just turned out to be in defensive guys as the backup plan. So that's pretty much how that worked out to be. But as far as my personal assessment of which players are going to be earning, reps and getting significant playing time, first one that stands out to my mind is, let's see, he said 3rd round or later. So I'm going to go with Troy Pride, the cornerback out of Notre Dame. It's a homecoming from him. He's coming from Greer, South Carolina. Now, I will be cautious when saying this, saying that he displayed on his film a lot of the Bradbury syndrome, meaning he would be in position to make the play, but he got to turn his head around and actually get his hands on the ball. But he's faster than Bradbury, a little bit more athletic than Bradbury. Quote coming out of college. Here we're talking about a 4'4" guy. He has great length as well. Can run stride for stride. He can be physical. But yeah, he just gotta work on his ball hawking abilities. That's really the only thing about him. So he would be the guy, if I had to pick one in the later rounds, that would be someone to look to make a immediate impact in the starting lineup.
I saw a story. Coach Rule was talking about Pride from Notre Dame, and he said he was doing a video conference with him at his house, and his wife was in the back cooking or something and overheard the conversation. And once it was over, she poked her head out and was like, "Who was that? Who were you talking to?" And he told her who it was, and she was like, "He sounded super professional, like really professional, put together, real mature young man." And it goes along with what we were saying earlier in this segment, that the Panthers have made a conscious effort to bring in character guys that they can really build around. I did like the fact that I also saw that Christian McCaffrey had reached out to Matt Rule to get Derek Brown's phone number immediately after they had drafted him. So you can kind of see the young guys kind of trying to build a core together. I don't know if any Panther fans out there are really expecting this Panther team to do a whole lot in terms of a lot of wins next year, but I like where they're going in terms of what they're trying to build from the inside out, identifying the guys they want to build around. And I kind of like what they're doing, although at this point, every fan probably thinks their team, nailed the draft and hit a home run. Everybody's 0-0 right now, so right. I'm trying to tamper my enthusiasm, but I really liked what they did in this draft. Kevin Avery from the 4-Man Rush here with us on the rundown. Real quick, Kev, before I let you go, in terms of the overall draft grade for the Panthers, what would you say the 4-Man Rush would give, or you? I don't want you to speak for the other members of the group. What would you give the overall draft grade for the Panthers, knowing what they did, all defense, traded back up to get a player in the mid rounds, drafted some D-line, drafted some secondary help. It feels like all 7 of the picks are going to contribute in one way or another, which was it feels almost like by design. So what would you give the overall draft grade for the Carolina Panthers for the 2020 draft?
Overall, I would give the draft an A- grade. And the reason being, heading into the draft, if you looked at our roster, what areas really stunk up the place. And you would have to say defensive line and the secondary. And, what it comes down to is we pretty much drafted 3 defensive linemen, and we drafted 4 defensive backs. I mean, we injected not only talent but youth and depth at key positions. So yeah, I would give that an A- grade. I mean, draft picks like Bravion Roy is 6. I know a lot of people think 6th rounders, after the 4th round, don't contribute much. He's going to be one of my surprise players that I'm going to make sure I make people, aware of, particularly that deep.
Yeah, I like him.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people, because of his size, because he's 337, 6'1", they got him pegged as just strictly a one technique. But ourselves and Marty Hurney end up saying that, hey, he can play 3 technique as well. So the fact that we got players that can play multiple positions along the line, when we go to our 30 front, he's likely going to be the nose here when we do 30 front defenses. But overall, even the 7th rounder, I had posted this in the 4-Man Rush. I was studying, watching film last night. Stanley, the cornerback we got out of FIU, he's someone. Thomas Oliver, he's someone that reminded me of a combination of a Josh Norman and a Captain Mullen when they got drafted. He's only been playing cornerback for 2 years, but you could tell that he used to play wide receiver. I mean, he recognizes routes extremely well and makes plays on the ball. He just got to get his body, conditioned to cornerback nuances and things like that. So he's a good project player that we might not see develop 2, possibly 3 years down the road. But when he does, he's going to be a solid contributor. But overall, yeah, I just really like the pieces that we added. I don't have no problems with it being all defense. I mean, when you're giving up 29 points a game, your defense needs to be addressed.
Yeah, I could definitely see that, and seeing the stuff with excuse me, with Roy and his size. He's not really a sack guy. He's really more of a run stopper. So I definitely could see the usage for him late. And if I'm not mistaken, he's another guy that went late that didn't get a chance to benefit from going to, the combine and all these other things. If I'm not mistaken, I don't believe he was invited to that stuff. And, he played for Coach Matt Rule at Baylor. So he had an intimate, look at what he could do. And the scouts were all telling the Panther staff, hey, this guy's really, really good. We need to take a look at him. And I think they expected him to be gone mid-rounds, like third, fourth round. And he fell all the way to the sixth just because I think just circumstances of the day where teams just didn't have normal access to some of these players that they normally would. And it feels like the Panthers kind of grabbed some guys in the fifth, sixth, and seventh round that should have went higher if they had went through the regular process. And hopefully they kind of lucked out and got some talent. So I'm pretty happy with the draft too. Tell the folks out there watching the rundown right now where they can get to your content, because you guys put out, even with everything going on right now, you guys put out a whole lot of content in terms of Panther talk. You guys put out something each week for your show. Tell everybody where they can get to your content and how to get to the four-man rush.
Yeah, sure. First of all, the main place to get all of our social media accounts is go to thefourmanrush.com, and that's spelled THE, the number 4, man, MAN, rush, RUSH.com. That'll lead you to our other social media sites, like our Facebook account, which is our biggest so far, our YouTube, where you can get all of our video content, Instagram, every Tuesday night at 9:15. We go Instagram Live with Timmy VO to let our fans ask us questions. We call it our pregame, before we start recording our actual podcast at 10:15 every Tuesday night. Also, go check us out on, for those of us like in TikTok. Now, podcast listeners out there, you can catch us on iTunes, Spotify. You can also catch us on Podbean as well. We just put out a lot of great content and a lot of ways for everybody to take access to.
Cool deal. Well, hey, man, definitely want to bring you back on again soon. And I'd already pegged you to be a judge in our upcoming NFL Greatest Team Ever bracket. 64 teams, every Super Bowl winner ever, plus some at-large teams. And actually, the episode with me, Rod, and Brandon selecting the 4 1 seeds will be coming out a little bit later on this week. And then we'll probably get everything rolling after that. So definitely I'll have you back on for that as well. Get you out of here, my man. It's always good talking to you, especially talking some Panther talk. Finally, some sports that we can actually talk about. I hope you're doing well and still staying healthy out here with all this nonsense going on. And I'll definitely talk to you again soon.
All right, you too, Des. Take care.
All right, now that's Kevin Avery from the Four-Man Rush. And welcome back to the Rundown. Desmond Johnson here with you with some of the usual suspects. I've got Ryan Stone. He is a studio host from IMG Learfield Sports for App State. He also handles play-by-play for App State basketball as well. Then I also have Brandon Blakney from WXII Sports on the line as well. And guys, before we get into the rest of the NFL draft, there's some laundry I wanted to get out of the way here. Just mentioning our sponsors, Body Pattern Fitness and Wellness here in Kernersville. They are doing online classes right now. You can actually see some of those at the Sports Carolina Monthly Facebook page. We typically post those. Sandra Vicente, the owner, does online boxing and fitness classes while you're sitting at home on the couch. So definitely check them out if you're trying to get healthy and stay in shape. And then, of course, Blue Naples Pizza over in Kernersville as well, off of Union Cross Road. That's kind of my go-to spot for strombolis, cheesesteaks, wings, whatever you need. They've still got takeout regular hours available. Go by and tell them that you heard about them on the Rundown. And the owner will probably give you a little bit off on your tickets. So definitely go check out Blue Naples Pizza in Kernersville. Fellas, I want to get right into it. The first thing, and I'm going to start off with you, Ryan. The first thing that popped in my head when I wanted to talk to both of you guys regarding this draft is where Jalen Hurts landed in Philadelphia, of all places. Now, over the past 24 hours, I have heard that the reason why Philly picked Jalen Hurts, they were high on him as well, But apparently the Patriots, who on this program, I've been hollering that the Patriots should get Jalen Hurts. They were going to draft Jalen Hurts, and Philly swooped in and moved ahead of them to draft him so that the Patriots could not receive him. What are your thoughts on Philly making that move to go get Jalen Hurts, considering they just gave Carson Wentz a $100 million contract? Now, I do think that most of his guaranteed money will run its course over this next season. So really, if things kind of play a certain way, Philly could probably get out of the contract with Wentz. But do you think it says a lot about what Philly thinks about Carson Wentz and his health going forward that they drafted a quarterback like Jalen Hurts that could, in theory, compete for that starting role here down the road, with Doug Peterson being the quarterback type coach that he is? It feels like a project. A lot of people are saying, oh, he might be just a backup. I think he might actually be the starter in Philly in a year or two. What are your thoughts on Jalen Hurts to Philly?
I think I don't know that their plan is to make him the starter, but I do think I've heard some people also say that they kind of view him in a Taysom Hill type role as well. So I can definitely see them also using him as an athlete. I think that's a little bit of a disservice to how good of a quarterback Jalen Hurts can be, but he could definitely make an impact in that way as well. Also, I mean, does anybody know who the backup quarterback was before this in Philadelphia?
No.
Because I can't name him off the top of my head. So, I mean, obviously it shows the value of the backup quarterback position as well for the Eagles. And as you mentioned with Carson Wentz's health issues. Also, if you give Hurts some opportunities here and there where you can show that he can make plays and make an impact, then he maybe becomes a big trade piece somewhere down the line where you could bring something back if you're the Eagles.
Yeah, I could see that too, and that thought crossed my mind. And I'm going to let Brandon jump in here on this topic as well. What were your thoughts, Brandon, when you saw that Philly not only drafted Jalen Hurts, but they moved up to try to get him, knowing that I don't think Carson Wentz, I think he's only played 16 games in a season once, if I'm not mistaken. He's never played a full season other than that one time. The Super Bowl run was the Nick Foles show, basically. He was no longer even in Philly. Yeah. Brandon, what are your thoughts on Jalen Hurts landing in Philly? And do you think that Carson Wentz should be looking over his shoulder at this kid that, by all accounts, is a coach's son, bright kid, 30 touchdowns, 20 what did he do? He was the first player to have 30 touchdowns passing and 20 rushing or something like that in two different conferences or something along those lines. He was Offensive Player of the Year in SEC and the Big 12, which I'm not sure has ever happened before. I've raved about Jalen Hurts for months on this program. So what are your thoughts on Jalen Hurts to Philly?
I like the move, honestly. I was curious as to why that they moved up, but now that you had dropped that tidbit about the Patriots wanting to draft him, which would have been absolutely scary. I know we had talked about that many times. But Hurts, I think the Eagles made a good move just because of the fact that you said Wentz has had health issues in the past. A lot of the pretty much 3 out of the 4 seasons he's been in the league. He hasn't had a full season in. They have paid him some money, but Hurts will be on a rookie contract, so he won't cost him too much. I think you can incorporate some special packages in this offense specifically for him to give Philly a different look, to give defenses a different look if, they do down on Wentz. I like that Hurts is going to come in humble. And, we've seen the Twitter reaction or interaction between the two. He's already embraced learning behind Carson Wentz. So I don't think Wentz will necessarily have to look over his shoulder. I think Hurts will take the opportunity to train, learn from a pro, and really just get adjusted in Philly, man. I think he'll be a very fan favorite and a locker room favorite.
What were you guys' thoughts on the presentation of the draft itself? I personally liked it. I thought actually it was an improvement over what they normally do. It felt more intimate, I guess.
They can do this from now on. I don't care about it ever being in the city again. I mean, some of the reactions with the families and the girlfriends. And,
why were so many girlfriends taking L's?
Man.
I was gonna get into that, but CeeDee Lamb has already shown that he has all pro hands,
hands and awareness. Reflexes.
He snatched that phone so quick. Like, no, that's not the right phone. No, that's the bat phone. Don't touch it. Like, I mean, he did it so fast. I think between that and one of my favorite parts was Bill Belichick just kind of wandering in and out of the camera, like letting the dog do the picks or whatever. And it was the one,
dog.
yeah, it was like the first or second round pick they did. And it's like the dog is just sitting there, and all of a sudden Belichick pops up, gives him a treat, kind of looks at the screen, just kind of wanders off like he's above all of it. It was gross. Like, oh man, that's pretty good.
Nice to see some humor from Bill Belichick for sure. Anytime we,
I've heard he's a really funny guy. Actually, I've heard he's really funny behind the scenes.
I think my other favorite one was the offensive lineman the Titans picked in the first round. The girlfriend sitting on his lap, and you see mom come in and yank her out.
Was it 3 yanks? The first one was like, all right now. Second one was like, come on. Third one, I ain't
She physically, it was not a light. It was not a light all right, get up now. It was by the time she got her up, she was getting her up, like physically moving her out of that gym.
That was one of those. Let's take a ride downtown, gentlemen. Type of yank her arm. Come on, we got to go. Get up out of here. No, but back to the actual meat of the draft itself. I thought it was interesting that the Dolphins and the Chargers neither had to move up to get the guys they wanted. A lot of people forget at this point last year, it was all about tanking for Tua. And we legit thought at the beginning of the NFL season that the Dolphins were trying to put the worst team in the history of the league out on the field. I think we did learn that, but it's hard to tank in the NFL. We hear people talk about it all the time that, they're going to tank for this guy or tank for that guy. But to be honest, it's hard to have 53 professional NFL players suck on purpose. And I think that's kind of what was taught here. And the reward, Miami, they didn't have to move up to get their guy. They ended up getting their guy exactly where they were in the first round. But because of this, with both the LA Chargers getting Justin Herbert and Miami Dolphins getting Tua Tagovailoa, that's 2 more spots that are potential starting positions that are now probably gone. So, of course, I'm thinking about my man Cam Newton, who's no longer a Carolina Panther, and his options are kind of drying up here, especially with the news from this weekend that former overall number 1 pick and Heisman Trophy winner Jameis Winston is going to sign a 1-year deal with the New Orleans Saints. And I'll start with you again, Ryan. What are your thoughts on what does this mean for Cam Newton? Because I'm looking around the league and I can't really find a place except for some places that on the outside don't make sense, like New England and some other spots. But what do you think all of this means now that the weekend's over for Cam Newton and his potential to be a starter in 2020 anywhere in the league?
So if you pay attention to Las Vegas, before the draft, Cam Newton's odds of being a New England Patriot, they were plus, I want to say plus 400 or something like that.
Right.
They have gone down since the draft. They have gone down to minus 190. That's a huge move, and it sounds extremely likely like that's where the landing spot is at least thought to be for Cam Newton. I still don't know that it's necessarily the best fit in the world, but look, somebody has to play quarterback for the New England Patriots, and their options are down at this point. It seems like to Jarrett Stidham, Andy Dalton, or Cam Newton. So Cam Newton is certainly the best of those 3 options. So I think it would make sense at this point for them to at least give Cam Newton a 1-year deal.
I can't sit here and fathom Bill Belichick and Josh McDaniels sitting at lunch or something talking about this and them going, well, I think Jarrett Stidham can actually really do this, blah, 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 blah. I mean, I feel like Belichick is like, can we put Cam Newton in this system and have it go? And I think Josh McDaniels probably has half a playbook that he has not been able to use in the past 4 or 5 years since he came back to New England, because he's had a 40-plus-year-old quarterback running everything that can't run. He couldn't run when he's 24, so he's definitely ain't going to run when he's 42. With Cam, I'm thinking back to when McDaniels was the head coach of the Denver Broncos and had Tim Tebow. Think about the offense they were running with Tim Tebow, even though they won't have that Tim Tebow weird throw-in motion, looks like he's throwing a chicken by its neck kind of thing going on. But it would be Cam Newton doing that instead. And they've got talent around him. They drafted 2 tight ends in this draft. It almost felt like New England didn't pick a quarterback, if I'm not mistaken, in the draft. No, they didn't. And it almost felt like, even though Belichick did say, and come to find out it was attached to the Jalen Hurts thing, that wasn't their plan. Their plan was to draft a quarterback. Brandon, I'll come to you. It feels like maybe Jalen Hurts was going to be option A for the Patriots, And if that fell apart for whatever reason, they weren't going to trade up for him. If he was there in the third where they had him graded, they were going to get him in the third. The Eagles jumped in ahead of him, took that guy. So now they have to go to option B. And I'm curious if option B was Cam Newton, Jameis Winston. And if you had to choose between those two, to me, the choice is clear. If he's healthy, you're going to go get a former league MVP that's only 30 years old that you could play for at least a couple of years and maybe do like a prove it deal or something for a year or two, see if you can fit in their system, kind of coalesce to what Belichick wants from his players. What are your thoughts, Brandon? Because I still have a spot in my head that I think he's going to eventually land up. I don't want to hear from you first.
Oh, yeah, no doubt. Honestly, I like Jalen Hurts to the Patriots. I thought that was going to be the move, and I'm actually surprised that they didn't maybe trade up to get him or explore it. But I think Cam Newton is the perfect fit for the Patriots system right now. He can expand this playbook. He's coming in with a chip on his shoulder. He's finally healthy. We're seeing a happy Cam Newton. He seems that he's passionate right now. I mean, the guy's working out to gospel music, so I'm definitely not sleeping on him. That's a little different in itself. That's a little different. So I'm just expecting a monster season. I think the Patriots have to work to get some weapons around them, some more weapons. But I think in this system with a natural athlete like Cam, dynamic athlete, big physical, still can make any throw you want him to make. Let's not pretend like this guy can't stay in the pocket, but he just doesn't have to be contained in the pocket. He has options. I like the fit. They've got a good running back in Sonny Michel. They've got a good offensive line. That would be the best offensive line Cam Newton has ever stood behind since his days at Auburn. No kidding. No cap right there. I really think facts. That if he went there, they could make it work, and he might mess around and get a Super Bowl.
I'm gonna mention it again, probably for the 10th time. I've been on this tip since maybe 2019, maybe. Really, when we knew that Cam probably wasn't going to be coming back to Carolina, wasn't definite yet, but especially after the Super Bowl when things started to snowball a little bit, I finally started to hear it in national sports talk radio over this weekend after the draft was over, where I started seeing people start to bring up this theory that I've been putting out there, and that was the best spot for Cam Newton, the way the landscape is right now, would be to go to Dallas and be the backup for Dak Prescott. Because for one thing, it gives leverage back to Jerry Jones in terms of he's negotiating a long-term deal with Dak Prescott right now. Dak doesn't want to sign. Dak is threatening to sit out the virtual workouts or whatever that are about. I think they're supposed to start today, if I'm not mistaken. He's tagged, so they've got him for the year. But what happens if you bring Cam Newton in and you tell him, well, we're not bringing you in to be a backup. We're bringing you in to challenge Dak. We want you to push him, to challenge him. And we're not saying he's the starter. We're not saying you're the starter, but we're going to let you guys go at it. Can you imagine Cam Newton in the Dallas Cowboy offense with the offensive line they have, with Zeke Elliott behind him, with Amari Cooper and now CeeDee Lamb on the outside, and the slot receiver, I forgot his name. You could have him in there as well. This is more talent. Yeah. Michael Gallup. This is more talent than Cam has ever had in Carolina in one stretch, except for maybe 2015. And even then, his wide receiver core wasn't that great. He just kind of made him look better. I think he could do that. And then what happens is, say he doesn't really play that much, he's still going to be on TV every week because it's the Cowboys. They'll show him on the sideline, looking at a clipboard, doing this, doing that. So his name will still be out there. If Dak plays poorly, because he's got the pressure of league MVP sitting behind him, you can throw Cam in there and immediately get rolling. And the Cowboys, people forget, they started having a lot of success last year when they started running RPO. Like when they started running RPO with Dak and Zeke, it made it hard to kind of figure out how to cover them. If Cam is healthy, imagine running RPO with Cam and Zeke. And now you've got a different, and with the guy that's been running it his entire career, now it's a different beast. Dallas becomes a different thing. It's must-see TV. Jerry Jones, come on in here, Cam Newton. We'll sign you to a contract and you'll be on for a year, and then we'll see what happens after that. But you throw him $20 million to be the backup or whatnot in Dallas. Who's the backup in Dallas right now? Like, who is the backup quarterback?
Cooper Rush is the backup there, and they have actually been kind of high on him over the last couple of years.
Who is Cooper Rush?
He was at Central Michigan. He's a guy that actually ran the RPO at Central Michigan. Was a really good college quarterback, and he's actually played pretty well in the preseason. So I don't know that they would bring Cam in just because they they seem to like Cooper Rush. And I mean, if you're paying, I forget what Dak's price tag was on the tag, but
it was like over 28 million, something like that. Over 30, I think. Actually, yeah, it's up there.
You're already investing that kind of money in the quarterback position, so I just don't know that you're going to throw a bunch of money to another backup quarterback if you're the Cowboys. But it is a fun thing to think about, and I mean, think it would be
Jerry Jones. It's Jerry Jones. Like, Jerry loves the Cowboys to be in the headlines like daily, and like, what would be better for Jerry to get the leverage on Dak to sign the deal they want? If Dak really wants to be there, he'll sign a long-term deal if they do this. And then with Cam, it's a best of both worlds because you'll get a chance to play a little bit. You'll be in Cowboys uniform. You're on every Sunday at 4:00 across the whole country. So to me, it would be a good move. If he has to be a backup someplace, I'd be pushing for Dallas. But honestly, I don't know what he's going to do.
Honestly, though, I feel like we're also overlooking Jacksonville.
I was about to say Jacksonville too.
I think honestly, if you're going to go, if he goes and serves as a backup there, I think that's a path to become a starter quicker. Because I mean, he's not going to be a backup
right now.
They're going with the kid,
Gardner
Minshew. Be the guy.
Oh yeah, man, going down to Jacksonville.
So I'm saying honestly, there's not as much talent, but you know, if you're trying to be the face of a franchise, he could go down there and fill some seats. And Florida, you know, they remember the name Cam Newton, so I'm sure he's still got some fans down there.
Well, state taxes down there.
If we're talking about a backup role, how about we head to the west side of Florida and Tampa Bay?
Oh, behind Tom Brady?
Behind Tom Brady for a year or two. You've got a ton of weapons.
That's interesting.
I mean, if you're going to be a backup, that would make the most sense to me.
But I see there's no playing time there. Like, I think Cam goes to Jacksonville.
Brady's
42. 43.
There's no,
be 43 beginning of the season.
My man is trying to play this season. There's no way Cam is trying to sit out 2 years. That's ridiculous.
Okay, I'll pose this question to the both of you then, real quick. What do you think the odds are Cam doesn't play at all in 2020? That he sits this year out? Like Randall Cunningham kind of went that route. He sat out a couple of years. I think he went and did construction or something. Came back, signed with the Vikings, had that super year, Randy Moss's rookie year. What do you think that you think that's a possibility?
Nah. Honestly, I don't see him being out of the league this year. Just me personally, I don't see that. The odds are low.
Well, as Brandon said, he's working out to gospel music, so he's working towards. He's working towards something. He is working towards something. He is not working out to build buildings or do roads
or to build my football. He's got to go.
Fathom Cam Newton with whatever his favorite brand of clothing is, whether it's Gucci, Prada, whatever. I can't imagine him dressing to be a construction worker.
Not unless it was for his philanthropy. That's the only way I
Okay, so I want to stick with the quarterbacks here because the other big story that happened in the first round, and it happened in Green Bay. Green Bay drafting Jordan Love so the Packers were 13-3 last year. They were in the NFC Championship game. They clearly needed just a little bit to get over the hump of the 49ers, who are going to be threatening again this year. They had a fantastic draft themselves. And in the first round, this is a wide receiver loaded draft.
The deepest wide receiver draft in history.
Yes, Aaron Rodgers has Devontae Adams All-Pro. He had his running backs an All-Pro, but they probably needed just a little bit more. And instead, what they do, they go and draft Jordan Love, who kind of became a darling of this draft in terms of like a quarterback that could get picked in the first round. Walk me through, and I'm going to start with you, Ryan. Walk me through Aaron Rodgers watching this draft and all of a sudden seeing the Green Bay Packers selecting a quarterback after they just told him for weeks, we're going to get you some weapons. We're going to get you some weapons. Then, boom, we're drafting basically your replacement. You're 35, and we've been through this before. You were Jordan Love a decade ago. Brett Favre and all that stuff. Walk me through Aaron Rodgers' reaction to seeing Jordan Love get drafted at quarterback for the Packers in the first round.
He had to be disappointed. Even though he's already reached out to Jordan Love evidently, and they've had a conversation. So he at least is taking a good approach to how he's handling that situation. But you have to be disappointed if you're a Packers fan, if you're Aaron Rodgers. To have, I want to say there were 21 wide receivers in this draft that had like a first or second round grade, and you don't take any of them.
Yeah.
You couldn't even be taking James Prochet, who's going to be a steal, in my opinion. He went in the 6th round, and you still don't take a wide receiver. The fact that you could go 7 rounds in this draft and not take a wide receiver to give Aaron Rodgers some kind of help. I didn't get to see Stephen A. Smith's reaction today, but I'm sure it was even more animated than mine is being right now for what the Packers did to Aaron Rodgers or didn't do to help Aaron Rodgers. I do get why they took Jordan Love in that spot. I will say that because there's value in that pick with him falling to 26. Rodgers has had some injury issues in the past few years. You do have to draft. You do have to draft your successor eventually. They've gone down this road before with when they took Aaron Rodgers to back up Brett Favre. So they've had success with that. So that's what they obviously believe in. But still, the fact that you don't give him any help is nuts to me.
None. And that's really kind of my question. And Brandon, maybe you can tag along on this part here, because what does it say that the Packers did this? Like, does it mean, are we reading too much into it? Was it just a matter of value falling into their lap and they just couldn't look past it? Because they did say a couple of weeks prior that if a quarterback fell to them, that they would consider, drafting a quarterback. It wasn't like he was just off the table. And this guy was considered the 4th best quarterback in the draft. So he did kind of fall to him. But again, the Packers were 13-3 last year. The Packers were in the NFC Championship game last year. They were a game away from the Super Bowl. Aaron Rodgers is 35, but he's still playing it. He has gone down a little bit in the past couple of years in terms of production. But as Ryan said, he's been hurt off and on the past couple of years. Do you think it was more of a slap in the face to Aaron Rodgers that they did this, Brandon? Or do you think it was just a matter of a talent that was so highly rated on their board fell to them and they had no choice but to draft him?
Well, I just want to say, first off, Jordan Love is a great talent. I saw him a couple times covering Wake Forest the past couple years. Good player. He has versatility. He can run. He can throw it pretty well. I think he's going to come in and really wants to learn behind Aaron Rodgers, and I think this is a good fit just because of the way that they run their offense and the mold that he comes into the league, good size, and he's a smart kid. But I think for Aaron Rodgers, though, and you know when you were a kid, you ride with your parents, and you'd be like, "Can we stop and get some food?" And you'd be like, "Yeah, we're gonna stop, and then the round passes, and you're like, "There's a McDonald's." It's like, "No, we're gonna wait a little bit." Another round passes, you're like, "Yo, there's another man," and then another round goes, and you're just like, at a point, then you're home because you didn't have any McDonald's money, so you played yourself.
I'm traumatized by this.
So I think it's a type of thing where it makes a man lose sleep. I honestly,
Brandon having flashbacks when he was like 8, running around in the car.
Aaron Rodgers, man, he's got to feel disrespected. He's got to feel disrespected. I think it's ridiculous. They got to make a move in free agency. They got to do something for this man. This is outrageous.
Go get Antonio Brown.
Yeah, go get Antonio Brown.
Seriously, like what's it?
Because this is outrageous. Well, you see those.
I mean, would you bring that virus into the Green Bay locker room? Really?
I mean, winning cures all.
I think the culture in Green Bay is good enough that it probably could sustain him. Also, there's nothing to do.
There's nothing to do.
So that might be the perfect place for Antonio Brown. Heck, even is Terrell Owens still trying to play? Chad Johnson.
Terrell Owens got to be
Chad Johnson was working out again.
Des Bryant. Any of them would be better than the second option on the Packers.
Des Bryant would be good. Des Bryant would be good.
40 by now too. I got Ryan Stone and Brandon Blakney on the log with me. And fellas, real quick, your overall thoughts on the NFL draft. What team stands out to you as the team that had the best draft out of all the 32 teams? And I'll start off with you, Ryan. Who do you think off the top of your head had the best?
Man, I hate to say it, and I hate to give the fan base any credit, but the Dallas Cowboys won this draft. In my opinion, they took 3 guys in the first 3 rounds that are starters from day one, in my opinion. CeeDee Lamb, Trevon Diggs, Neville Gallimore. Those are all impact guys for the Cowboys. CeeDee Lamb comes into a spot where he can be a slot receiver, or you could use him as a number 2, whichever way you want to use him and Michael Gallup together. Neville Gallimore will help anchor that run defense in the interior, and then Trevon Diggs is a cornerback that was pretty impressive during his time in college, I believe at Alabama. And I think the Cowboys and Jerry Jones did this on a yacht. Not only did he have a great draft, he did it while he was sitting on his yacht.
I heard it was an expensive yacht too. Yeah,
he had nobody there to stop him, and he didn't screw it up.
That was the running narrative going into it. Everybody, Twitter was going crazy, like, "Oh, Jerry's gonna be there by himself doing this. I gotta watch it. Must see."
I thought, he hit a home run. You got to take your hat off to him. I thought he absolutely hit a home run.
Brandon, who do you think out of all the 32 teams was the one team that stands out to you that had the best draft weekend?
Yeah, a lot of teams definitely had good drafts, productive drafts, but what comes to mind, Cincinnati Bengals. I think they won this draft, Des. Sorry to say it, man. Joe Burrow, best quarterback in the draft, hands down. I think he's going to be an immediate impact player. You get T. Higgins out of Clemson, who's a monster. Thought he was a steal. In my opinion, he's top 3, top 4 receivers in this draft. It's a deep receiver draft. He's immediate impact. They got the local guy, Akeem Davis-Gaither out of App State. Tough linebacker, hard-nosed, covers a lot of ground, can come in, provide some depth. I think they improved in a lot of positions, not only adding star power in necessary areas, especially if you bring back A.J. Green to pair him with T. Higgins, John Ross. That's a hell of a wide receiver trio. Then you still got Giovanni Bernard and Joe Mixon in the backfield. Got some linemen as well, add to the defense. I like what the Bengals did.
I know it's going to be considered a homer pick, but I'm going to go with the Carolina Panthers. and the reason why I'm going with the Carolina Panthers, I went and looked around like CBS Sports and ESPN, everybody else. Everybody's giving them an A for what they did. If you don't know, like I said, we had Kevin Avery on before you guys from the 4-Man Rush, and they are top notch in terms of Panther tape, talk about what the team's doing internally. They've got inside sources. They were the ones that broke the Luke Kuechly retirement thing to me about 2 hours before it actually happened. And they had pointed out a couple of guys like back in December, January, that the Panthers ended up drafting. And I think the Panthers ended up benefiting from the coronavirus more than a lot of other teams, because a lot of these guys they ended up drafting in the later rounds were actually graded higher than what they got them at. And I think a lot of that was because teams just couldn't see these players. Like they couldn't do the face-to-face interaction with them. They couldn't run them through individual drills or whatnot. So it really came down to who had the better scouting departments. And for as much flack as Marty Hurney has taken over the years with contracts, the one thing he's always been good at is draft picks, especially high-round, first-round draft picks. If I'm not mistaken, he's drafted like 5 or 6 guys in the first round for Carolina that have all become all pros at one point. I love the Derek Brown pick. I know it's between him and Isaiah Simmons, who ended up going to Arizona. But with Derek Brown, he fit a need, and he might be the best defensive player in this whole draft. I don't know if you guys remember. I do, because I can't get the images out of my head. But the Panthers defense was getting gutted by like week 4 or 5, and it just got worse and worse through the season last year, where guys were just running up the middle for 20-yard gains. It was embarrassing. KK Short was on IR. We didn't really have another tackle. Now you can put Derek Brown and Kawan Short in the middle and actually have a foundation for stopping the run, which is what the Panthers typically are built on. Their second-round pick, Yetur Gross-Matos from Penn State, the defensive end, 6'5", huge dude, raw, but he's actually going to be, I think, on the other side of Brian Burns. And now you got a front four that can grow together. I don't expect a lot out of them this year, like 5 wins at the most. They'll be in some shootouts, but the defense is all first-year, second-year guys, free agent guys that played under Matt Rule at Baylor and Temple and things like that. So I don't expect them to be, good like this upcoming season. I think they'll be fun, but I don't think they'll be good on defense. It's going to take them a year or two in another draft. But the Panthers, first team in the modern day era to draft all 7 rounds defensive players. No one had ever done that before. And the Panthers go out and land 3 defensive linemen and some secondary guys. So I don't have a problem with anybody they picked. I really like the 3rd round pick, the safety, Jeremy Chin from Southern Illinois. Like he's going to be beast in this defense, I think.
There was actually some talk going into the first round that Chin may sneak into the bottom of the first round. So the fact that they ended up getting him in the third round was definitely a steal for the Panthers. I thought they did a fantastic job as well. I think they got 4 to 5 potential starters with those first 4 to 5 picks. I mean, I think that those were a lot of really good, really quality defensive players. And it also speaks to how good the offenses are in the NFC South. The fact that they went.
Oh my God!
In this draft.
Man, and like I said earlier,
they did address some issues. They did address some issues.
Yeah.
I mean, you got Jameis Winston moving to New Orleans for a year. They just upped Taysom Hill for 2 years, so he'll still be that gadget guy. They still got Alvin Kamara. They still got Michael Thomas, who caught like 200 balls last year. It felt like Tampa Bay now with Tom Brady, Gronk's son with them. We'll see how that works out, but they had some pieces already. If Tom Brady can just avoid throwing 30 interceptions, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are probably going to win 10 games. So at least, so you got that there. Carolina wasn't a slouch on offense. Christian McCaffrey is in the backfield. He's probably the best running back in the league today. You got Curtis Samuel and DJ Moore on the outside. I was really surprised that no one drafted Thaddeus Moss from LSU. I'm hearing it was because he was too slow. But and he did eventually sign with the Redskins. The Redskins did sign him, so he'll be going to DC. But I kind of wanted the Panthers to draft him at tight end. But I think it says a lot that Joe Brady, the offensive coordinator for the Panthers, they didn't really push to sign him or to draft him for that matter in the late rounds when they could have. And he ended up being undrafted by anybody. So I guess I'm just totally wrong when it comes to draft evaluations on players. But final thoughts, guys, on the NFL draft in terms of just the whole thing. 3 days of Roger Goodell in his basement, kind of just dictating traffic, seeing coaches and families and stuff going on. We talked about it a little bit earlier about how, Ryan, you said you'd like it to stay like this forever. Final thoughts on the draft here as we wrap this up?
I liked it. I think that the Panthers did a lot. I don't like that they didn't get any linebackers though. That was just one thing I noticed that should have been addressed. That was crazy. But I think the draft overall turned out a lot better. It was a lot glitchy than a lot of people thought. They didn't have a lot of technology issues that were going around with all those cameras and all the homes. I think it made it feel a lot more human. Getting in and more intimate, getting to know families up close and more stories.
Yeah, right. I think it was great to see it like that this year because it just, for one, it gave you 3 days of stuff to actually watch in a time where there's nothing on TV to watch. And then we had The Last Dance last night, and today we're back to nothing to watch, or no sports to watch anyway. So the last 4 days have been great, but today sucks, and that's we got to pick up the smile, the frowny emoji. But it was great. I really enjoyed the draft. I usually do not watch the whole thing on Saturday, but I will tell you, I have YouTube TV, and I did not know that YouTube TV even asks you whether you're still watching or not until Saturday. That's how long my TV was on the draft on Saturday. I had no idea I knew Netflix did that, but I had never seen my YouTube TV did that.
I didn't know that either. I was popping in and out of it. I made sure to watch the first round, so I wanted to see what Carolina was going to do, and then I kind of kept abreast of it on Friday and Saturday. I liked it. I liked the whole format of it. I liked the idea of seeing the coaches we kind of already see them in their war rooms a little bit in the original format, but taking away the whole stage, the guy walks up, shakes hands, that kind of thing, and the fans booing, because if the team picked somebody, usually I'm thinking of you, Philly. If they picked somebody and they didn't care for them, the fans in Radio City Music Hall would just boo to death. And how do you think that kid feels? He just got drafted. It's the biggest moment of his life, and he's getting booed out of Radio City Music Hall because the team drafted him. That was gone with this. You just got a chance to see pure emotion from the players getting drafted. A little bit of a lag, in between them being selected and the player finding out and them getting it on the air. But that's to be expected with everything going on. I thought ESPN did a fantastic job with NFL Network to put this together and give us a little bit of something over the weekend. And speaking of The Last Dance, I saved part 3 and 4. I'm about to go throw some ribs in the oven and watch that right now while I'm getting this together. But tell everybody, where to find you guys right now. I know, Ryan, your podcast is on hiatus as we talk right now, but what's anything new going on right there, or are we just chilling until we get something to?
It'll be. I may do something here in the next week or two, especially after we get more into the Last Dance, and see what some of these NFL teams do after the draft. See what kind of moves they make as well. But you can catch that obviously on you can find me on Facebook, Ryan Stone, or at Ryan Stone Sports on Twitter.
And then Brandon, you just dropped a new episode of Live with Brandon Blakney, correct?
Yeah. Great interview with Rusty LaRue for all my Last Dance fans. Rusty was actually a rookie on the Chicago Bulls in '98 when they won their last title before they broke up, and he was a part of the rebuild the next year as well when all those guys got shipped off. So great insight on and off the court. He's got some great stories and some wild stuff to tell. I'll have another interview going into the Last Dance this week with another special guest. And we got some music artists as well. Had an up-and-coming rapper, Chris Meadows, talking for all the little Uzi fans out there. It's very similar. We'll have a country artist this week, so definitely check it out. Dropping Thursday on Sports Carolina Monthly as well as YouTube. And you can subscribe Brandon Lee TV.
All right, sounds good, fellas. So that's our 2020 draft recap for the NFL. Quick programming notes. We will have the Rundown's NFL Greatest Team Ever bracket will be starting soon. The episode where myself, Brandon, and Rod Funderburk pick the 4 number 1 seeds for the bracket will be out later this week, probably Wednesday. I'm thinking that'll come out. So definitely check for that. So for myself, for Ryan Stone, for Brandon Blakney, this is the Rundown. We'll see you next time. Peace.